right, we're going to start with a little bit of a warm-up, remembering some things we did back in chapter 1. Okay, back in chapter 1. We solved these equations in chapter 1. X squared equals 25. I need to get rid of that squared, or in other words, I need to ask myself, what number squared or what number times itself gives me 25? What are you guys going to tell me? What number times itself gives me 25? 5. 5 squared is 25. But I'm going to tell you there's another answer. There's another number times itself that gives me 25. Lane? -5. Nicely done. -5 times -5 is also a positive 25. So when you take the square root, you technically have two answers. Okay, you technically have two answers. So what we were writing back in chapter 1, we would say x equals plus or minus 5. A positive or a negative 5. And that's fine and dandy, except for we don't always have numbers that we know off the top of our head, right? So what we need to do is we need to take the square root. Remember the check mark. The square root of both sides. So grab your calculators. You have to learn how to do this because when it comes to your test, I cannot show you. Okay? Now, Talina's, yours is going to be a little bit different. And Lane, I'll get you a calculator here. Taya, yours is going to be a touch different. Thad, yours is going to be a touch different. Okay? But everybody else's should be the same. Okay. Put your finger on the number 7. Move one button to the left towards Mrs. Weiss. What button are you pointing at right now? X squared. And in the background, in a different color, do you see the check mark? See it in the background of it? How do I get to use that check mark? The second key, okay? So you need to type the second key, which is the upper left, hit the X squared button, type 256. Your screen should look like this. Then hit equals. You just type your number and hit that square root button. You just use that button. Yep, hit that button and then 256. Talina, you should have a square root button right on there. Do you see it? Right here. So just hit that button, put your check mark, and then type 256. And then equals. What do you get? What does your calculator say? Oh, sorry, Matthew, yours is different too. You actually don't have to use the second key. You have a button right here. So just hit that button and then 256. If your calculator, Haley, yours is the same. Did you figure yours out? Yeah, you already got it. Yours was different, so I was just making sure. Everybody get 16? Okay. So really, though, we need to write the positive and the negative 16. So B could be positive or negative 16. On your own, bless you, find me what C could be. On your own, find me what C could be. Bless you. Second. And then you're going to hit that X squared button. Now type your 324. C could be, careful, positive or negative 18. Positive or negative 18. Okay? You want to be able to do this on your calculator accurately because the last thing you want to do is lose points because you can't type it into a calculator, correct? You know what you're doing? Now, that's the square root. That's like going backwards and discovering what did I have to multiply to get me 324. Sometimes today they're going to say to you, take, let's not go with a 1. 26 squared. Now, not the square root, so don't use the second key. 26, and then you want to hit the squared. Taya, you will just have to go 26 times 26, okay? When you take 26 squared, what do you guys get? 676? If you didn't get 676, do it again. Do it again. The difference of squared versus square root. Oh yeah, you got it. You're good. Just stretching. Okay. Everybody good so far? Okay, Ms. Hoff, how does this really come full circle? We did this activity with Starburst on Friday, and I'm not really sure. And you guys had an advantage because your class period was a tidge longer even with our early release. Many of you discovered what I wanted you to with those Starbursts. So I set your Starbursts up that you had 3 vertically, 4 horizontally, and then 5 diagonally, right? And what did you discover when you made those squares with that? Gatlin? Very good. So we had a 3 by 3 square, which is how many Starbursts? 9. And then a 4 by 4 square, which is 16. And a 5 by 5 square, which is, and we added the 2 smaller ones, 9 and 16 gave me 25. And that was the purpose of that, to have a hands-on, why does this work? Okay, so let's connect this all back. Today we're going to deal with right triangles. A right triangle is a triangle with 1 right angle. 1 right angle. How many degrees is in a right angle? 90 degrees, right? How do I know in a triangle that there's 90 degrees in that angle? They put the little square in the corner, right? Okay. The legs are the sides that form the right angle. That should sound familiar from Friday. The hypotenuse, please say that for me. Hypotenuse is the side across from the right angle. It is the longest side of the triangle. Always, always, always. So here's a right triangle, and I know it's a right triangle because of the 90 degrees in the corner. The 2 sides that form that 90 degrees are called, the 2 sides that form the right angle are called legs. The side across from the 90 degrees, Miss Hoff is going to make you do this a lot today. You put your pencil on the square 90, you go straight across. This side is called the hypotenuse. Hypo, Hypotenuse. Hypotenuse. So what's going to happen today is, notice we're not talking about the angles. Okay, we talked about this being 90 degrees, but we're not talking about how many degrees are inside. We're not talking about the length of those sides. Okay, the Pythagorean theorem, try it. Pythagorean, oh, that was a weak try. Go again. Pythagorean theorem describes the relationship between the lengths of the legs and the length of the hypotenuse, hypotenuse, for any right triangle. As long as there's 90 degrees, the Pythagorean theorem is going to work. In a right triangle, the sum of the squares of the lengths of the legs is equal to the square of the length of the hypotenuse. And clearly you could go put that into action, right? Sum means what in math? Adding. If you add the 2 smaller sides, you're going to get the bigger side. But we have to remember we're dealing with squares. JC and Chris, enough. So here's the main frame for today. The Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. This may be the second most important equation you learn in 8th grade after slope and y-intercept. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. A and b are your legs, the 2 sides that form that 90 degrees. Technically, the order does not matter. C is your hypotenuse. Here is the most important thing about the Pythagorean theorem. C has to be the hypotenuse. C has to be by itself in the equation. Your hypotenuse is always by itself. Okay, enough jibber jabber, Miss Hoff. We haven't done any single calculation today. You're right. Flip the page. So what do our problems look like today? Here's a right triangle. How do I know it's a right triangle? It's got the square down the 90 degrees in the corner, okay? And we have a 21, a 20, and then a C. So they gave us 2 sides, and they want us to find the 3rd side. Because it's a right triangle, we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem. The number one thing that Ms. Hoff is going to ask you to do, put your pencil on the 90-degree mark. Draw an arrow directly across the triangle from that 90 degrees and circle it. That is your hypotenuse. It is crucial for you to know what the hypotenuse is, because in the equation, that is always letter C. So it's asking us to identify what is A, what is B, and what is C. C is C, or our unknown. What do you want to use for A? 21. What do you want to use for B? 20. What if I flip the order of those? Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay, so our equation is A squared plus B squared equals C squared. What'd you tell me A was? So 21 squared plus, what'd you tell me B was? 20 squared equals, what's C? C squared. Now we are going to solve an equation. We are going to solve for C, but we have to use our order of operations first. Think about what the order of operations are, and looking at what you have, what is the first thing I should do? Exponents. Nicely done, you guys. Grab your calculators. 21 squared, not the square root, but 21 squared. The number is going to get larger. Is, say it again. Thank you, 441. Now we need 20 squared. 400 equals C squared. What do you think I do next? Bingo, they're on the same side. We're going to combine like terms. 441 plus 400 is 841. Nicely done. Now this looks like what we did right at the beginning of the class period. Agreed? To get rid of the squared, we take the square root, which is the check mark. In your calculator, type in the square root of 841. Second, x squared, 841. 20 what? 29. Now remember, when we take the square root, really we have two answers, right? A positive and a negative. When you take the square root, you technically have two answers. This equation has two solutions. Okay, but can you really, this is my triangle, the side length is negative 29. Can you have a negative side length of something? So only the positive answer works. So the length of the hypotenuse has a length of 29 centimeters. I'm going to ask you for the label today on every single problem. What's your label? And you got to look back at your problem. Now, one quick thing. C is our hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is found directly across from the 90 degrees. And what? There's something else I know about the hypotenuse. It's directly across from the 90-degree angle. And it's always the longest side. So we just said that this is 29. Does that stand true that that's the longest side? It's an easy way to check. See what I'm saying? An easy way to check. Good work. Let's do it again. Example number 2. See your right triangle? 90 degrees. Put your pencil on the 90 degrees. Draw an arrow directly across and circle it. What are you circling? X. What is X? That's like your C or your hypotenuse, right? What do you want to use for A? 16. What do you want to use for B? 12. See how I labeled those on my triangle just so I don't forget? So then I have A squared plus B squared equals C squared. A is 16 squared. B is 12 squared. And C is X squared. Nicely done. Next, I should do your squares first, right? 16 squared is 256. 12 squared is 144. Now I should add those two together. 400. Anybody else get 400? Okay. Now what do I do? Take the square root. Nicely done. Big check mark, right? Big check mark. Technically, there's two answers, but Miss Hoff has reassured us we really only need the positive. The square root of 400 is 20. What would my label be? 20 feet. Now, hey, Allie reminded us that our hypotenuse should be the longest side of our triangle. If this is 20, does that stand true? Yes. Okay? Try the one below that all on your own. Do the same exact thing. Do the same exact thing. I want you to see if you can do it start to finish on your own. I thought you were like, where is this problem? What'd you get for C? 13 feet. Stand true to the hypotenuse being the longest? Yes. Thank me later. We're going to skip example 4. Example 5 with the airplane. What is different about this example than any other one that we've done?
The x isn't the longest.
Very good. Our unknown is no longer a hypotenuse, right? Miss Hoff, if we do what you told us to, draw from that 90 degrees straight across, I know what my hypotenuse is. So this time, one of the legs is the unknown. Okay, so 13 is our C. What do you want A to be? X, and B is 12. So we got to fill in A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So you guys told me A is X squared plus 12 squared equals 13 squared. Now we still have exponents, still going to be the first thing we need to take care of. 12 squared is 144. 13 squared is 169. What do I do on this one now? On the last ones, we just added those two numbers together. Should I add those two numbers together in this case? Dad? Bingo, it's just like going back to chapter 2 and solving for x, right? We got to get rid of that positive 144 by subtracting 144 to the other side. X squared equals 25. Now that x squared is by itself, we can take the square root, and you guys can tell me x is 5. What would my label be? Miles. Now, wait a minute. Allie told us this should be our longest side. It's not our longest side. Tori? Very good. 13 is our hypotenuse. Is 13, even with us calculating this, still our longest side? Yes. Okay. Nicely done. Go down to example 7. Go right below it. People hate example 7. Why? It's 3 dimensions and it hurts our brain. It's not as easy to see that triangle. So what I always suggest is to trace it a little bit darker so that you remember what you're looking at. And if you're still like, I don't see that triangle, I'm going to draw the triangle out here. Okay? What is this leg in the diagram? X. What is this leg? 45. And your hypotenuse is 50. Miss Hoff always says, draw an arrow from the 90 degrees straight across. That is what letter? What letter, though? C. Very good. What do you want A to be? And B? 45. So we would say A squared plus B squared equals C squared. A is X squared. B is 45 squared. C is 50 squared. First thing I should do, exponents, X squared plus 2025 equals 2,500. Then I should subtract 2025 to the other side. X squared equals 475, right? Now what do? Take the square root of both of them, and instantly you all go, why? It's a decimal. Did Miss Hoff ever say it couldn't be a decimal? No. Okay? Let me take that back. Hit the double arrow. If you get it to say 5 square root 19, hit the double arrow. Talina, hit shift enter, and yours should go to a decimal. Nope, hit the double arrow. Now it's in a decimal, right? Everybody got a decimal now on the double arrow? Okay, so I'm going to steal this off Isaiah's calculator. He has 21.79449,472. And I'm going to tell you, always read your directions, but today I'm going to tell you we're going to round to the nearest tenth. How many numbers are after the decimal with the tenth? 1. So really we have 21.7. But then I have to go next door. Is 9 big enough to round? Yes. So X is actually 21.8. And don't put a 0, just put an 8. And what's your label? Feet. 21.8 feet. Hit your double arrow. Okay. All right. Start to finish on your own. Do example 7 or 6, the one to the left. All on your own.
Doing example 4 too, or
No, we are not going to do example 4. So type it in and then hit that double arrow. Did you get yours to be a decimal? So I got 35 squared to be 1225, 50 squared to be 2500. When I subtracted 1225 to the other side, I got 1275, correct? Take the square root, rounded. Somebody give me my rounded answer. Gatlin. 0.7? Anybody else? 35.7? Yes? And what would my label be? Meters. Very good. 35.7 meters. Honest to God, your calculator's huge in this, agreed? And to make sure that your C is in the right spot. I copied your direction or your notes separate of your worksheet so that you wouldn't have to flip back and forth a gazillion times, okay? Your worksheet, don't turn it in. We will correct it tomorrow at the start of class. I'll give you the first couple answers before you leave, but this is due at the start of class tomorrow.